This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to the Creep Street Podcast.
Oh, doesn't that feel good?
It must.
My God.
Finally.
It's got that brand new car smell.
It kind of does.
Even though it's over 3 years old now, it's still got that smell.
It still has it.
Nice interior. Ooh, God.
Oh, God, you love to see it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here today. What a damn pleasure. Now, if you are a fan of the show, please, like, rate, subscribe, all of those wonderful things. It really means so much to us and helps the show so much. So thank you for doing that.
Yes.
Also, if you want to follow us on social media, ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can follow us on Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod, TikTok, Creep Street Podcast, and Facebook, Creep Street Podcast, okay? On our Facebook, we have a subgroup called Citizens of the Milky Way. Go ahead and check that out. Now, a lot of people are telling us that one episode a week is not enough.
Hey, I mean, they are screaming it at us.
Yeah, and here's the thing, it's not. Just like scientifically, it's not enough.
It's been proven.
The human body can't perform at its highest potential.
Yeah.
Without bonus content. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, it's on the food pyramid now.
Yeah, for Christ's sake. So here's the thing. We've got it all figured out for you. It's going to be great. It's over at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. There you're going to get all sorts of bonus content. It's amazing. And here's the thing that's especially exciting is that we are about to do a goddamn refresh of our Patreon.
That's right.
We are going to be giving you bigger and better bonus content than ever.
Woo!
Starting in July. So get in there quick because we're doing some fun stuff over there.
Yes, we are.
We're all about that bonus content. So once again, if you want to check that out, that's over at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. And also, just a reminder that our Listener Stories episode is coming up quick. So please send in your stories, an experience that you've had. If your hometown has a true crime case that you know about, is there an urban legend from your area? Have you seen a ghost? Any of these things, we want to hear about it. So you can DM us on any of our socials, or you can email us at creepstreetpodcast@gmail.com. And thank you so much to everyone who has already sent in their stories. If we haven't responded to you yet, don't worry. We are going to. We're just we're spinning plates over here. We're figuring it all out. But we've got your stories if you've already sent them in, and please send them in if you haven't yet. Now, Dylan, last week we went up to Canada.
Yes, we did.
And gosh darn it, thank you everyone for the positive words, the positive remarks about the episode.
People really liked it.
Yeah. It has been brought to our attention that maybe some words were mispronounced. And for that, we say we're so sorry.
Yeah.
But today's a little different. Don't get me wrong. We love doing stories from all over the world.
Absolutely.
We love it. But you know what? Sometimes you gotta go American.
Yes, and that is what we are doing today.
And that's today. Yeah. Dylan, what is going on? What in the American heck is going on today?
We are taking a trip through American history today.
Oh.
Folks, this week's episode is Gettysburg, the Haunting of Farnsworth House. Yes. Ooh, what's that I hear? Is that the sound of the fife and drum? I could smell gunpowder in the air. Oh, is that the sound of musket fire, cannon fire? Oh, folks, let me butter you up a bit with my sources here.
Yeah, I'm intrigued big time.
My main source, where the vast majority of the information comes from today, is from the book The Farnsworth House Haunting on the Gettysburg Ghost Trail by Richard Estep, then the website The American Battlefield Trust, and episode 3 of season 3 of Kindred Spirits.
Fantastic stuff. Wow. So, am I correct in assuming you are going to be serving us some Civil War realness today?
Very much realness today.
American Civil War, we're talking 1860s.
Now, it's been a long time coming, but Creep Street has finally found itself in Gettysburg.
Here we go.
Said by many to be the most haunted town in the United States, if not the world. As you know, there have been countless volumes written about the Battle of Gettysburg. So as always, we say we will obviously be condensing huge amounts of history into shorter blurbs, because at the end of the day, we're here to discuss a haunting.
Yeah.
But obviously, to fully understand these hauntings, we need historical context. But we're taking a ton of history and condensing it down for our purposes today.
And I'm sure in the future, with future episodes, we're going to be coming back to Gettysburg at some point. So you know what? If we don't hit on it today, we're going to hit on it next time.
Oh, yes. There are many things in Gettysburg that are super creepy outside of just Farnsworth House.
Yeah, you can't do all of Gettysburg in one episode, I don't think. So
no.
Yeah.
So between July 1st and July 3rd of 1863, the town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, found itself the site of what would be the bloodiest battle of the American Civil War. When the smoke of battle cleared, over 50,000 men lay dead in the pastures of Gettysburg. The Union Army stood victorious, making the battle a devastating loss for the Confederate Army, and while the war would rage on for another 2 years, this Union victory would signal the South's eventual loss of the war at large. The Battle of Gettysburg, though, has been cemented as one of the most important events in American history. So, above all, we must remember the immense amount of lives that were lost.
Oh, yeah. It's hard to even really fathom.
Truly, that many, 50,000 in one spot within 3 days. And it wasn't like because of one big bomb or something.
Right.
This was people fighting, sometimes hand to hand.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable, unfathomable carnage.
I always, in my head, I imagined Gettysburg. I've never been there, so I just, in my head, I was thinking like all of this fighting took place just in like fields and like farms and stuff.
Yeah.
And that is true.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of it took place like in the city, like in the town.
Yes.
So it was just, it's the whole area experienced this tragedy.
Yes, there was a literal fighting in the streets of Gettysburg, in the alleyways and whatnot. And it is so surprising that of the civilians that were there, only one actually died.
Which is crazy.
Yes, and we will talk about Jenny Wade later in the episode. But yes, the only, and when you consider how fierce the fighting was, and they were commandeering houses, taking over houses, it's surprising that only one civilian died. Also, I want to explain how the structure of this episode is going to work.
Okay.
With a lot of our haunting episodes, there's typically a narrative of some kind. You know, it's a story about a family who moves into a house, things start going bump in the night, and somehow they find a way to deal with it or get out of there or exorcise it or what have you. Mm-hmm. So Richard Estep, the author of my main source, is a paranormal researcher, and this book kind of chronicles his stay at the Farnsworth Inn. But the majority of the stories are ones he collected from employees there, from other guests who stayed there. So it's kind of fitting that we're talking about a historical event, because as I was doing this research and I was, crafting the episode, I realized it's almost exhibit-like. So it'll be more like we focus on this room, we tell the stories, and then we move to the next.
Yeah.
It's very exhibit-like, almost like a museum, which I think is very fitting. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot of content to go over here. I literally, and it's such a well-written book, a lot of it is just history.
Yeah.
And so I did my best to sort of milk
Oh, yeah.
all the paranormal I could out of this book, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun today.
Dylan has been over here working and twerking, squeezing that teat, trying to get all the milk out of this thing. He has been literally studying for a while now on this. So I'm excited. I don't know much about this, so I'm going to be kind of going on this dang ride with everybody. I'm looking forward to it.
So on the first day of battle, citizens of the town were ordered to take shelter in their homes and cellars. There were so many wounded Union soldiers that the army had to commandeer many local homes and businesses to use as makeshift infirmaries. And the Confederates would commandeer many houses as well. That's why sometimes there was fighting in the streets. Was a group of Confederates may run into a house looking to take shelter and find it's already filled with Union soldiers.
Oh my God.
So a lot of that shit going on, and vice versa, you know.
Oh, yeah.
There were two families among many that found themselves caught in the crossfire of the battle, the Solenses and the Weikerts. They would seek refuge in a 2-story residence that was known as the Sweeney House. The Weikerts were actually already staying there as guests of the owner, Harvey Sweeney, and the Solenses were a family coming from the west side of town trying to flee the battle. Day one of the battle, the Confederates had pushed the Union Army back through most of the town, going door to door searching for Union soldiers that were either taken prisoner or outright killed. By the end of day one of the battle, Sweeney House and the area around it was firmly now in control of Confederate forces. During the fighting over the next 2 days, it's hard to tell who was occupying Sweeney House at any given moment. We do know that for a good portion of the battle, Confederate snipers had taken up residence on the second floor of the house and were raining down lead on the soldiers in homes below. By the evening of July 3rd, when it had become clear that the Confederates were in retreat, rebel soldiers vacated the Sweeney House and the town altogether, making it firmly back under Union control. Harvey Sweeney would die a few years later in 1870, passing the house to his daughter Elizabeth Sweeney, who then sold it to her mother, Catherine. Catherine would live there until her death in 1908, and the following year the house was bought by a couple named George and Verna Black, who converted the place into an inn called Sleepy Hollow Lodge.
Interesting. Okay.
Over the next 4 decades, the lodge served thousands of tourists stopping in town. Even as early as then, Gettysburg was becoming a tourist spot.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
George and Verna left the inn to their daughter, Sarah, and it remained in their family until 1972, when it was sold to the Schultz family, who were locals of Gettysburg. The Schultzes poured money into the place, fixing it up and adding a restaurant to it as well. They also changed the name of the place to Farnsworth House Inn in honor of Union Army Captain Elon J. Farnsworth. And to this day, the Farnsworth House draws tourists from all around. Some there for the fine dining, others for the history of the place, and others for the supernatural activity said to be rampant within Farnsworth House. So let's begin our tale with a woman named Kayla, an employee there at the Farnsworth House, and as far as I know, still is today. According to the author of my main source, he first met Kayla in the summer of 2018, and by then she had already been giving tours of Farnsworth House for 14 years. In that time, she had experienced countless paranormal happenings. One such incident happened in the Ginny Wade room. Now, the Ginny Wade room is actually not connected to the Farnsworth House. It's now owned by the owners, the same owners, and it's part of the property. It's kind of in the garden area of the Farnsworth House. Right away, she found the Ginny Wade room to be unsettling. She would be staying the night there with her husband. The place just creeped her out enough that she had trouble falling asleep until late into the night. Well, it was around 4 a.m. when Kayla suddenly awoke with a jolt, sitting upright in bed. Something had awakened her. A sound. It was the sound of footsteps. Footsteps that were loud and heavy, coming from the room above them. It was as if they were literally like having a hoedown up there, just stomping. She was quoted saying, "It sounded like they were having a polka party up there."
Oh my God. A polka party?
You're damn right.
What the heck?
Well, of course, this made her a little angry because, hey, it's 4 a.m.
Come on.
She had to be up at 8 for breakfast. And some wackos are up there stomping around like it's river dance, for Christ's sake? No.
No. I mean, Riverdance is Irish and polka is Polish, but that's a whole other story.
Oh,
Continue.
yeah. Well, the point is they're stomping around like goddamn idiots.
They're stomping, yeah.
She even shouted out, "Knock it off!" hoping the inconsiderate folks above them would hear her and stop their shenanigans. But the ruckus continued for another hour. Kayla was then around 5 a.m. able to get a few more hours of rest before breakfast. So morning comes and Kayla goes to the front desk to drop her key off and check out. And the person at the front desk asked them, of course, "How was your stay?" And she said it was great except for the people over them who were stomping around in the wee hours of the morning. And that's when the cheery demeanor of the receptionist dropped away completely. They asked Kayla what room she had been staying in. Kayla tells them that they had been staying in the Ginny Wade room. The receptionist replied saying, "There is no room above the Ginny Wade room."
Yikes. Yeah.
This would be the first experience Kayla would have here, and it was also what made her fall in love with the place and eventually work there herself.
Oh, yes, Kayla. That's great.
So now we come to the arrival of Richard Estep. He's arriving for his stay.
Okay.
He would be staying, well, over his stay, he'd be staying in a few rooms, but for these first few nights, he would be staying in the McFarlane room. He describes this room as being right out of a Dickensian novel, with the exception of, the TV and the cooler. You would have thought this room was straight out of the 19th century, except for what was, essential, like electricity, things like that, modern amenities, the TV, whatnot. But other than that, it looked like it was Civil War era. There was even the old clawed-footed tub in the bathroom.
Oh, love those.
Love those. Those are cool. Now, you've probably noticed that each room in this inn is named after someone. Each is named after someone who was important to the inn's history. Not even necessarily the Civil War or the Battle of Gettysburg. Some are, but some are just named after people who have been influential to the inn.
Okay.
So this room in particular was named after John Finley McFarlane. He and his wife Martha were the first owners of the place ever since they constructed it way back at the beginning of the 19th century. This cost them a whopping $700.
Whoa!
A boatload of money back then. While he was well respected and a politically connected man, luck was not one of McFarlane's traits. In 1842, McFarlane must have had come into some kind of economic hardship as the bank stripped him of all his assets, including the house. Now, there are several spirits said to reside in this room alone. One is said to be the spirit of a young boy named Jeremy. And we will be talking a lot about Jeremy. He's going to pop up a lot throughout this episode.
Okay.
But essentially, just briefly, his very tragic backstory. He was outside playing when a horrible accident happened. He was run over by a horse and buggy.
Oh, God.
Barely alive, he was carried inside by his father to be treated, but would succumb to his wounds and die in the nursery, what is today the bathroom of the Sarah Black room. Another specter is said to reside in the McFarlane room. It is a Confederate sergeant, a sharpshooter who was stationed in the attic. Sometimes he's in the attic, sometimes the McFarlane room. Well, it was in this very room that the author of our main source, Richard Estep, would be staying for the first few nights. It was around 3 a.m. that first night, and Richard was roused from his sleep by a loud metallic banging noise.
And we know 3 a.m. is an important time.
That's right, baby.
The witching hour, baby.
Startled, yet still in the daze of sleep, Richard looked around the dark room to see what had made that noise. Then it came again. Bang. Richard realized the noise was coming from the water pipes. Richard was able then to go back to sleep, but occasionally the banging of the pipes would wake him about every 15 minutes. But it was around 4 a.m. there came a noise that was not the pipes. There was a loud banging sound from out in the hallway. Richard got up, shot out of bed, grabbed his room key, and ran to the hallway. There, he found two other guests in the hallway who were very drunk. They apologized for the ruckus they were making, and they had accidentally locked themselves out of their room, and they were banging, on the door, trying to get, they probably had someone else in there trying to get them to open it. Once that was settled, Richard went back to bed, and night one would pass without anything strange.
Okay.
So now let's talk about Joe Natalini and his wife. The next day, after his first night there, Richard had scheduled an interview with this man, Joe Natalini, and Natalini was a police officer and, according to the source, was a no-nonsense guy who was not quick to, like if there was something bumping in the night, before he's going to say ghost, he's one of those dudes, he's going to make sure everything is to the level. Making sure everything's top shape.
Oh, yeah.
They met up together at what is called the Gettysburg Battle Bash. It's a paranormal festival, I guess, held there every year.
Oh.
And Richard was actually there. He was doing a sign. He had like a booth there and was, signing books and whatnot. And so he meets up with Joe and his wife. And the Natalinis, they're also staying the night at the Farnsworth Inn to participate in a big public ghost hunt that was going on. All through the night, they had experienced various odd phenomena, such as knocking sounds and even EVPs they captured down in the cellar. It was around 3:30 a.m. when things began to wind down and everyone from the ghost tour got back to their rooms to go to bed. While the group would be focusing on the attic and the cellar, Joe was taking extra precautions. The evening before, at around 7:30 p.m., he had set up a trail cam in the McFarlane room. It was stationed by the TV and also had a motion sensor that was facing the bed. So the camera covered most of the room and it would be triggered if motion was detected. He and his wife would return after the ghost hunt not long before sunrise, so they were out pretty late. They quickly washed up and went to bed, and his wife fell asleep almost immediately. Joe, though, while exhausted, couldn't fall asleep just yet, so he turned the TV on at a low volume, hoping that maybe that would lull him to sleep. And, well, he was just about to drift off, his eyes growing heavy, when he noticed something. Something standing at the foot of the bed. Joe blinked his eyes. Surely he must just be seeing things. But there it was, not even 8 feet away. A dark shadow figure. It stood at least 6 feet tall, yet was indistinct enough he couldn't tell if it was male or female, but it certainly had arms and legs and a head. Joe lay there absolutely still. Before going to bed, he had left the front door to the room open a smidge, just so some light could come in from the hallway. He watched as the shadow figure turned and made its way in the direction of the door, even blocking out the light from the hallway as it stood in the doorframe. And then it disappeared. Joe quickly woke up his wife, telling her what he had just seen, and she held him close, afraid that whatever it was may come back. And come back it did. Just a few moments later, as Joe's wife was clutching him tight, they had a bad feeling that something was about to happen. That's when the black mass returned. It was difficult to see at first, as it was about the size of a basketball. It floated in midair about halfway up the wall, and they watched in silent terror as the thing rose upward, made a turn to the right, and vanished into the ceiling. But it wasn't over. They had the feeling that they were not yet alone in the room. That's when something from the hallway caught their eye. Turning their gaze to the door, Joe's heart nearly leapt out of his chest. There, in the crack in the door, staring back at him, was a face.
No. Just literally no.
And it was no shadow figure. What Joe was looking at was a clearly discernible human face. It wasn't see-through. It was, it had eyes, a nose, a mouth. It was clearly the face of a man.
No, that's my nightmare. Literally, I worry about that.
At first, Joe tried to convince himself that it was just another guest to the inn being a little peekaboo, which already is, it's like, first of all, it's a hotel. Don't leave your door open a crack. But Joe knew what everyone on the ghost tour looked like. They had spent hours with them, and this face was no one he knew. On top of that, the figure made no noise. Now, keep in mind, this house is freaking old. There is not a floorboard in this place that doesn't creak.
Yeah, right.
Someone standing outside the door, you'd be able to hear the creaking. Joe had been awake, and he would have heard the sound of, even if you're tiptoeing, it would have creaked. Somehow, though, this face got there without that. In a flash, Joe leapt out of the bed and ran to the door, and right before he whipped it open, the figure darted away to the right in the direction of the staircase. Joe whips open the door and runs out into the hallway, and there's no one there. He even ran to the top of the staircase that looked down into the lobby. No one there. And he would have heard the sound of footsteps running. He didn't hear that. So Joe went back to his wife, and they discussed what had just happened. They both loved ghost hunting, and even if when they're on a hunt, if they encounter something, that's wonderful. But for them, when it's time to go to bed, no way.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They packed up their things and decided to head home to sleep. They made the 2-hour drive home and were happy to slide into their own beds. The next morning, Joe woke up refreshed and remembered about the trail cam he had set up the night before. Excited to see if he caught anything, he played back the footage, and he was totally floored by what he saw. During the night, the motion sensor of the camera was triggered twice. The first time was when Michelle had briefly returned to the room to get a few things while they were on their ghost hunt. But the next was neither of them. What it captured was a dark shape on the right-hand side of the room. The light at the bedside, the little lamp, had been left on, and as the dark shape passed by it, it even blocked out the light. It then passed right through the bed before disappearing on the other side of the room. Then the camera itself shook violently and faced another direction as if someone had slapped it.
Wow.
Very interesting, huh?
Yeah, what the hell? That's scary.
I mean, these ghosts don't like cameras.
These ghosts are pissed as heck.
The next person that Richard talked to was a woman named Lisa. She and her friend Nikki are two paranormal enthusiasts, and they booked a stay at the Farnsworth House, in the McFarlane room, as a matter of fact. These ladies were there for one reason, to see a freaking ghost. They checked in at about 5 p.m., dropping off their bags, and they headed out to dinner. They were going to bypass the usual tourist spots and hit some of the more lesser-known paranormal locations. One place they wanted to hit up was called Sacks-Covered Bridge. The place had also come to be nicknamed Suicide Bridge. Well, the ladies thought this was maybe the right place to have a supernatural encounter. The sun had already set by then, and the ladies had finished dinner. They drove out to the bridge and turned slowly onto Waterworks Road. That's when a cyclist suddenly appeared in the darkness. He was wearing no reflective clothing, nor did his bike have anything on it like lights or reflectors or anything. He just appeared out of nowhere. Nikki had to slam on the brakes just in time to prevent running this guy over. He was clearly oblivious to them as he swerved right in front of them. So she slowly passed by the man, and as they did, he pulled his bike over and got off. They looked in the mirror to see the cyclist was staring at them with his mean glare. After they had passed him, they pulled the car over themselves because something about this man was off. Nikki looked in her side mirror and could plainly see that this man was staring daggers at them. And he was also very old, with a long gray beard. This guy, whomever he was, didn't look like the typical Gettysburg ghost. His dress was very modern. Lisa asked what the old man was doing, and Nikki said he had gotten off his bike and was just staring at them. Or Lisa couldn't see him from her vantage point, so Nikki said, flip on the backup camera. So she did, and immediately said, he's not back there. There's nobody back there. Nikki's like, yes, he is. I can see him clearly. That's when they realized that though the man was visible to the naked eye, the cameras couldn't see him. And then just as quickly as he appeared, he was gone, right before their very eyes. Well, even for these supernatural enthusiasts, this weird encounter was enough for them, and they headed back to Farnsworth House for the evening. But the spirits of Gettysburg, though, weren't finished with them just yet.
I didn't think so.
And keep in mind, it's funny because this guy looks, his beard and stuff kind of seems Civil War-like, but he was wearing modern clothing. That was, I thought, very interesting. And I guess it's possible he could be a ghost from a more recent era.
Yeah.
It doesn't
It just happens to have a long beard or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense that even though, the events that happened during the Battle of Gettysburg were in the 1800s, what was it, 1863? So even though the Battle of Gettysburg was in 1863, I feel like the fact that it has become such a haunted location and paranormal location that maybe just people that lived there or died there are more likely to either become a ghost or however you think of it, just because the area is kind of fraught with that.
That's a very good question.
You know what I mean?
I like that. Well, they get back to their room and they wash up and they're like, you know what? Why don't we have a little ghost hunting session in the comfort of our own room?
Oh.
So they turned off the AC just so it would cut down on noise. And after getting comfortable and getting everything situated, they began. Lisa called out, asking if there was someone there with them, and if there were, to please knock twice. Suddenly, bang, bang. There came two loud knocks that seemed to come from the closet. They jumped with a start and quickly grabbed their phones and started snapping photos. After a flurry of snapping pics, Lisa quickly rifled through them to see if they caught anything, and nothing. Bingo. The last photo had captured what looked like a white mist floating in front of the closet. Quickly, they tried interacting again, asking for further communication, be it knocking noises or even other physical signs that there was someone there, but then all was quiet. Some time passed and they figured, well, it must be done for the night, so switching off the bedside light, they decided to try and get some sleep. And that's when things went to the next level.
Yikes, okay.
Not long after flipping off the lights, they began to hear these pings and popping sounds. They breathed a sigh of relief, realizing it was probably the radiator. But that feeling of comfort soon passed when they realized, wait, it's summertime. The radiators haven't been on in months.
Yeah.
Then came the footsteps. Thud, thud, thud. It sounded as though heavy footsteps were walking back and forth across the landing outside the door to their room. And it would happen in intervals. It would happen, then stop long enough for the ladies to nearly fall asleep, only for it to start up again. It almost seemed like it was calculated. Literally every time their eyes were starting to close, they would start again.
Yeah.
Sometime during the night, they were able to fall asleep, but it certainly was not for long. Nikki was awakened again, but this time by the sound of someone whispering. And the whispering was coming from somewhere in their room. She tried to calm herself, telling herself that it was probably just Lisa talking in her sleep. But Lisa lay right next to her, and this sounded like it was coming from a different direction and from a little farther away. So laying still, Nikki whispered, "Lisa, are you awake?" Lisa responded immediately, whispering, "Yeah." Nikki asked, "Do you hear that?" And Lisa responded, "Yeah, it sounds like whispering." The sound was indistinct enough that they couldn't actually tell what was being said, but it was clear that it was two people having a conversation. And it wasn't like it was two people in the next room talking.
Mm-hmm.
No, this was in the room they were in.
Weird.
It was almost like two people whispering because they didn't want to wake up their guests.
Very nice.
Nikki thought perhaps it was coming from the rocking chair. That same rocking chair is said to be where the ghost of Jeremy's father, the boy we mentioned earlier, is often sighted, among other places. That's when Nikki felt something pull her hair. She turned around in a flash, but there was nothing and no one behind her, only that empty rocking chair. Now, with the AC out in the summer, of course, the room had started to get kind of hot and stuffy, yet despite that, Lisa began to feel icy cold chills running up and down her left side. Half of her body was hot, and the other half was like a sheet of ice. It wasn't until around 5 a.m. that Lisa and Nikki could finally fall asleep. The sun was already beginning to light up the sky. Just before 7 a.m., Lisa was shaken awake by Nikki, who was clearly excited about something, and Nikki asked her, "Lisa, when did you get out of bed?" Lisa was confused. She hadn't gotten out of bed. She didn't know what she was talking about. And Nikki's like, "Well, then who did that?" Pointing down to the foot of the bed, Lisa nearly jumped out of her skin. Sometime during those couple hours they were asleep, between 5 and 7, the duvet that they had both slept under was somehow neatly folded at the foot of the bed. It had even been tucked underneath the mattress on both sides.
Weird.
Just like housekeeping would do.
Yeah.
Well, that was enough for them. They packed their bags and left.
I mean, there's a ghost story about that possibly kind of happening at the Stanley Hotel as well. And I've heard of it in other places where it's like the being kind of tucked into bed.
Correct. Yes, absolutely. So the next folks Richard would interview was a couple named Anthony and Dina. He happened to meet them also at the Gettysburg Battle Bash. The couple had stayed a night at the Farnsworth Inn for a couple of days the previous year. It was in July, not long after the 4th of July. Checking in, the couple was aware of the reputation the place had, and they did have an interest in the paranormal, but at the same time, they were not as wild about it as Joe Natalini and his wife. They get to their room and they unpack, and as soon as they unpack, they flip through the guest book where people had written down experiences they had had in the room. Later that night, they were washing up for bed. Dina showered first, then Anthony. Anthony was just coming out of the bathroom, and he had shut the door behind him, and just as he did, there came a loud boom in the bathroom. Clearly something had fallen, like maybe, the shampoo bottle. We know, sometimes that'll scare the shit out of you.
That shit is loud as hell.
Loud as hell.
It's shocking for everyone. And when you're in the shower and it happens, it's like almost embarrassing because you know that whoever is home is gonna like check in on you.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like, no, my hands are slippery.
Immediately, Anthony opened the bathroom door and stepped back inside, but after looking around, everything was in its right place. But wouldn't you know it, the rest of the night was quiet and calm. The couple enjoyed a great night's sleep. The next day, they had a blast exploring Gettysburg and once again enjoyed a second peaceful night with no activity.
Okay.
The next morning, they had their breakfast and packed their things, remembering to take with them the cameras and the EMF readers that they had set up while there. When they got home and actually reviewed what they captured, that's when their minds were blown.
Oof.
After they had set everything up and left their rooms for the day, it wasn't hardly 5 minutes when the paranormal shit hit the fan. So keep in mind, this is after they had just checked in, they've left. So this is what their camera is showing. Mm-hmm. The EMF reader they had set up started going crazy, but it wasn't just like it was picking up someone talking in another room. This was like someone was up close and personal talking into the thing.
Oh, that's so weird. It's very alarming. That's freaky.
And Anthony watched the tape as a black mass began to cross the room to the window. What was interesting was that Anthony and Dina had set up their equipment in almost the exact same way that Joe Natalini and his wife had. And what they captured was very similar. The author does point out that what they captured was very similar, but there were some differences. For example, the shadow in Anthony and Dina's video moved from left to right, the opposite of what Joe's capture did. So this would seem to indicate that this entity is not residual.
Right. Very interesting. Because
very interesting.
You do think, or at least I think, when I think of Gettysburg ghosts, I tend to think of them more in a kind of residual kind of way.
Yes, and a lot of
them seem to be.
And I think a lot of them probably are. I'm sure there's many intelligent ones too. And the author will break that down a bit more too. But yeah, keep saying what you were saying.
Yeah, just that it's interesting that in this house where so much happened, that there is some kind of intelligent haunting of some kind, and maybe this black mass, maybe it is like the ghost of a specific person, or maybe it's like an entity that found itself there because of the energy that is there allows it to manifest or whatever the hell.
Yes, very good idea. Yes.
I don't know, but yes, that'd be a lot to look back at.
Now, let us turn our attention to the attic of Farnsworth House.
I mean, yeah, for sure. I think that's a great idea.
As we said before, this was where Confederate soldiers had stationed themselves and were raining down sniper fire.
Yeah.
It's actually believed that from a window in the attic was shot the bullet that killed Ginny Wade, the only civilian killed in the battle.
Okay.
During the fighting, most of the residents had taken cover in their cellars, but not Ginny. She was still hard at work in the kitchen, baking bread for the wounded Union soldiers.
Oh, fuck.
A stray sniper's bullet from the attic of Farnsworth House penetrated the wall of Ginny Wade's home, hitting her and killing her, and she died there on the floor of her kitchen.
It's very sad, and also is like the way that she was standing, the way that she positioned herself was like behind 2 doors, like she opened up 2 doors to be protected. Like, she was thinking about this. She knew she was in danger, so she was trying to protect herself in the best way that she could, but unfortunately, a bullet just came from a direction she wasn't expecting.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I don't even know if those doors would have done anything anyway,
right.
But it's just sad because she knew that she was at risk and she was trying to do what she could to stay safe, but
yeah,
damn, that's That's very sad.
Well, interesting side note, I myself have stood in that very kitchen.
That's right, Dylan. Yes. When did you go to Gettysburg again?
I went on a tour of Gettysburg with my father back in 2007.
You love it.
And you can actually, at least then, you could still see the bullet hole where it passed through.
Wow.
And we did a ghost tour too, by the way, which was fun.
Amazing.
Well, Richard was attending a tour and investigation of the attic that night, and that was being led by Kayla, who we met earlier.
Of course, yes, we love Kayla.
The first thing she told them was to keep an eye out for Walter. Walter is the name of the Confederate soldier who was stationed in that attic, who they believe may have fired the shot that killed Ginny Wade. Mm-hmm. He is said to still reside there in spirit. And of course, many presume different things of why Walter would be haunting that place 160 years later. Some theorize that perhaps it's guilt over accidentally killing a civilian. However, in the heat of battle, it's probably more likely he didn't even realize he had done that.
Yeah.
Unless it's a thing when you die, maybe you realize you did.
You're like become aware, yeah.
Yeah, who knows? But that's something we don't know. But I would also think in the heat of battle, he probably didn't even realize he had done it.
I'm sure he didn't know, yeah. At least at the time.
Yeah. Now, the author himself says that he's not actually sure if Walter is really there. I personally wouldn't be surprised if it's some sort of residual haunting.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, it's a battlefield. You're held up in an attic as a sniper. Not only are you shooting at people are trying to shoot you. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of high energy emotion.
Oh, yeah.
Either way, guests will often report hearing what sounds like heavy boots walking in the attic, and also what sounds like heavy metallic or wood items being dragged across the floor. And this isn't just at Farnsworth House, but many locations in Gettysburg report similar things. And I mean, many hauntings have similar footsteps. That's a common thing.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the doorway leading up to the attic is usually closed off, but it's opened for specific tours and special appointments. Mm-hmm. They do this simply because there's a lot of antiques up there and cases and stuff. They just don't want people messing around and accidentally destroying things.
For sure.
So the door leading up to the attic is low enough that the author, Richard, actually banged his head pretty hard and was seeing stars for a few minutes. He banged his head pretty hard walking up there.
Good Lord, that sucks.
But they get up there, and Kayla offers them a seat on the benches that are lining the walls at one side of the room, and she told them to get comfortable and get out whatever equipment they had brought. So if you brought a camera and, an EVP recorder, whatever. And it was just about midnight when the whole group was finally up there and situated. With the door closed, Kayla began her speech talking about the Civil War relics inside the room that were mounted in glass display cases. Swords, scabbards, clothing, etc. Mm-hmm. But Kayla's speech was suddenly interrupted by a loud, drawn-out creaking noise. Every head in the room turned to look at the attic door, which had now somehow popped open and was slowly swinging on its hinges. Kayla briefly poked her head out the room, but there was no one outside, and they hadn't heard footsteps come up the stairs. But remember what we know about this place. It's old. There's not a single floorboard that doesn't creak. They would have heard someone coming up the stairs. Even if they were trying to creep up the stairs, you would hear the creaking.
Right.
Seeing no one, Kayla just shrugged her shoulders and closed the door back tightly, making sure it was tightly secured. She went back to the center of the room and was just about to continue her speech when, for the second time, the door is open again. And now everyone's a little uneasy. Well, Kayla was done messing around. She went over the door, closed it tightly, but this time took the little iron horseshoe latch and locked it.
Oh, yeah.
And what's interesting about this door, too, is usually, rather than just opening on its own, it would get jarred a lot. And you would have to, wiggle it a while and yank on it to get it open. The opposite of just opening by itself.
Sometimes it is that, and I'm so glad you're bringing that up, because sometimes it's the most important thing that you can do is to wiggle it and yank it. That's
right. Wiggle it and yank it. It doesn't just open willy-nilly.
Oh, come on.
Locking it with that horseshoe latch, surely this would do the trick. Kayla went back and started her speech again, and just as she's about done with her presentation, another sound comes along. Everyone looked over to see that somehow the latch had managed to flip itself out of its hook, a 180-degree flip.
Huh.
It now rested in its usual position, and just then, bang, the door opened again. But not with a gentle creak. It swung open so violently it slammed the wooden chest behind it. It was like someone kicked the damn thing open.
Wow.
Clearly, someone was essentially saying, keep the damn door open.
Oh, yeah, someone's pissed.
Everyone, even Kayla, nearly jumps out of their skin. There was something about this that did not feel friendly. Of course, Kayla, on the inside, felt the urge to escort everyone out of there, but the folks here, they're all paranormal enthusiasts.
This is kind of like what you want to happen, honestly.
Sir bread and butter, baby.
Yeah, come on.
It's a gold rush.
Because, a part of you, one part of you at least, is thinking, oh my God, something unknown is happening that I can't control. I need to get out of here for my safety. But then the other part of you is saying, it's time to pop off. Let's get wild.
Right.
And I think sometimes you need to listen to that part of you that says, let's pop off.
Also, they're in a group.
Yeah.
If I'm up
Come
there
on.
alone,
that's a whole other story.
I'm gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if I'm up there with 8 or 10 people, then it's
yeah.
kind of more fun. It's more interesting. You know
and you
what
have
I
a
mean?
damn squad.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it just feels better for sure.
So this group, they're excited. They don't want to stop.
No.
They plead with Kayla to, come on, let's shut the door again and turn off the lights this time. Kayla was torn. She obviously wanted to keep everyone safe, but also wanted to keep them happy. So reluctantly, she did as they asked. She went over, closed the door, locked it again, and taking a deep breath, she turned out the lights. Now, for a number of moments, all was quiet. She even tried calling out in the dark, asking if there was anyone with them. But still, all was quiet. But just then, there was a loud bang on the attic door. In a flash, Kayla, who was standing right next to it, flipped it open. And of course, no one there. So even if someone was playing a prank, she was right by it. She was waiting for it. And the second there was that bang, she whipped it open. No one there.
I knew that was going to happen. Not for a one gosh darn second did I think someone was out here pranking. I knew that this was legit.
After this, it went quiet again for a while. Richard had his EMF reader with him, and he was scanning the room, finding where cables and wires in the floors and walls might be. EMF, just so you know, is electromagnetic frequency. Mm-hmm. And the theory behind these things are, that spirits, they absorb energy and give off energy. And he actually recommends in the book starting every investigation this way, because these EMF readers pick up energy, whether it's paranormal or not.
Right.
It's a good idea to start off by sweeping the whole place, finding out where wires, all this stuff are in the walls, the ceiling, just so you can rule things out.
You're getting a baseline.
And like I said, in past episodes, we've obviously talked about the theory that these things feed off of energy and that it helps them in turn to communicate. Mm-hmm. For example, sudden loss of battery power.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
That's very common, especially right before a spirit manifests. It's like a little Red Bull for the spirits.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They're getting a little shot of adrenaline before they present themselves.
They probably need that to be able to present themselves.
They were also using that night a SB7 spirit box, and we've discussed what these are before. Essentially what these do is they rapidly switch through various radio frequencies. Mm-hmm. And the theory is that spirits may be able to communicate through these frequencies. Well, the rate at which these boxes flip through frequencies is so fast, no one radio station is going to come through in a comprehensible way. But if a distinguished voice comes through, it must be something utilizing those frequencies.
Right. It's not saying that the ghost is literally speaking through B96.
Exactly.
If you're in Chicago, that's
right.
a radio station. It's it's using the frequencies, not like a literal radio station, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So as they set up their cameras and sensors, Kayla decided to do it old school, busting out a good old pair of dowsing rods.
Oh, hell yeah.
I mean, that is old school. That's been done for centuries. That is old school. She calls out to any spirit that may be in the room saying, if the answer to any question I ask is yes, then make the rods cross. Mm-hmm. So Kayla calls out saying, please point the rods in the direction where the spirits were. Without hesitation, the rods quickly spun around, pointing directly at one of the corners of the room by the attic door. That's when the room got really quiet. The spirit boxes, by the way, are actually quite loud.
Yeah.
Almost obnoxiously so.
Yeah, for sure.
You've probably seen them in, like, if you watch the Ghost Hunter shows, like at Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, it's that thing, it sounds like...
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a water sprinkler. Like,
it does, yeah.
It kind of has that sound. It's very, it's kind of obnoxious. And the reason why it fell so quiet was because those fresh batteries they had just put in those spirit boxes were now all mysteriously drained.
Oh, yeah.
They asked if the shot that killed Ginny Wade had come from this room, and immediately the rods crossed, indicating that yes, it had. Where exactly? Kayla asked. And the rods turned, pointing directly to the attic door, which is interesting because that's not a window, but...
Yeah, I don't know.
Kayla then asked a question of Walter directly, asking, Walter, are you here with us? If you are, please open the rods. And swish, the rods opened. She then asked Walter, were you the one who drained the spirit box? Swish, they crossed again, indicating yes. While this was going on, they quickly changed the batteries in the spirit box and they had it up and going again. Kayla asked, how many soldiers were present in the attic at this moment? Then, as clear as day, a voice from the spirit box said, 5. And as it did, the dowsing rods crossed in agreement.
Wow.
She asked, do you always stay here in the attic or do you roam the house? This time, the answer was not that clear. I wonder if it's because there's too much in that question. Do you always stay here? If not, where else do you go? It's kind of a...
It's like a lot to ask of in a dowsing rod, situation.
Typically, the answers you get from a spirit box, and not always, but usually it's 1, 2, maybe 3 words.
Yeah. It's hard to really get like a full nuanced answer.
Right. Well, it was getting late, and Kayla decided to tap out for the night, but she let Richard and some of the other guests stay up there in the attic, and they attempted another EVP session. This time, asking questions that were more era-specific, like, what's your feeling about Abe Lincoln or General Lee?
Okay.
They even played some old Civil War-era music that would have been popular in the day, but alas, the attic was quiet for the rest of the night.
Okay.
So despite all the many stories of encounters in the McFarlane room, Richard's second night staying there was also peaceful and uneventful. The next day, Kayla introduced Richard to 2 paranormal investigators who were also there conducting investigations primarily in the basement and the attic. Their names were Robert and Nicole. This story is interesting. This one I find really fascinating.
I definitely, truly just like viscerally agree with the fact that like in most situations, I feel like the attic and the basement are where it's most, at least it feels the scariest.
Isn't it funny? It's just haunting or not. It's just the attic and the basement are always the less, even if it's like a nice finished basement.
It's scary. They're horrifying.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
So these 2, their names were Robert and Nicole, and they told Richard they had had a very interesting experience the night before on a public ghost hunt in the Farnsworth house. They were running a spirit box session, much like what Richard and Kayla had done with the group the night before in the attic, and they claimed that repeatedly they had gotten what was distinctly a child's voice saying, "Yes, Daddy," whenever Robert would ask a question.
Oh, that's so cute and sad.
They had gone up there the night before, very late, after everyone had left. So this was after Kayla and Richard were up there and had their thing. This was late. They snuck up there and did a little thing.
They were being a little naughty.
Well, I think because they were there to investigate, they might have had special permissions,
true.
I'm guessing. They were hoping that since the place had been filled with tourists not long before, that maybe there was energy up there for which the spirits could use,
Oh, yeah.
Well, voices began coming through immediately. In addition to the child's voice, there was also a gruff, unfriendly adult voice when every time Rob asked a question would respond, "Prick."
Oh, okay.
Well, Richard, the author of the book, was intrigued by this and asked if later that night he could join them when they returned, and they were happy to have them.
All right, more the merrier.
So at 2:30 a.m., the 3 of them headed up to the attic with Kayla in tow. And before they started, they shared with Richard some interesting EVPs they had previously captured. There was one in particular that was very interesting. They asked the spirits whether or not they should go directly to the basement from the attic or if they should stop in the Sarah Black room along the way. That's when they got a clear response of a voice saying, "Yes, yes, yes."
Oh, okay.
They said they had gotten the best results when they were just kind of goofing around, not asking your typical formal EVP questions.
Yeah.
So they fired up the spirit box and got started. This time, instead of asking questions, they more just talked to each other, seeing if some unseen voice would like to chime in.
I like that. That's a good idea.
Right as they finished telling a funny story, a voice came through the spirit box saying, "Laughter."
Oh.
And when this happened, they just kind of encouraged the voice, saying it was welcome to join the conversation, saying like, "Yeah, that is pretty funny, huh?" You know?
Yeah.
Well, the topic soon got onto the subject of UFOs because they were talking.
Oh.
Richard also, he had a book he was working on that was about to come out that was about ufology.
Oh, cool.
And, Rob and Nicole were also kind of interested in the subject. So Richard explained how he felt that paranormal investigators, UFO enthusiasts, cryptozoologists actually have more in common than appear on the surface. Something we talk about.
We are of this
ilk.
This ilk as well. We think the same things.
Born of the same stock.
There it is.
It's all part of the spectrum, said Nicole. Then turning her attention to the spirit box, she asked, "What do you guys think of that?" Once again, they heard a voice say, "Laughter." But this time it was less clear and kind of garbled. Rob then wondered out loud, not asking a question to anyone, but he just wondered out loud saying, "That's interesting. I wonder if that was the same voice from before." And right as he said that, a voice came through the box crystal clear saying, "Prick."
Okay.
It was once again that mean, gruff voice.
Yeah.
And Robert explained what's interesting about that is that this wasn't the first time the word prick had come through the spirit box. In fact, he said that on at least 10 different investigations, a voice had called him a prick through the spirit box.
Wait, that's phenomenal news.
I know,
right? Do we
right?
think that this is like a spirit following him around that just hates him?
Hey, you know what? We will get to that.
Oh, okay.
And Richard said that the word prick alone meant they were probably picking up something paranormal because if it was a random radio station, the word prick is considered an obscenity by the FCC.
Oh.
And funny enough, right as Richard finished explaining that, the voice came through again saying, "Prick."
Damn.
Feeling intrigued, Robert called out, "Say that word for a third time, please and thank you." And of course, they got the word prick as clear as day.
What the hell? That's crazy. And in these sessions, from my understanding, that is rare that you get like the same word repeated so often.
Right.
Very interesting.
But that wasn't the only insult the spirit box had for Robert.
Okay, let's go.
Just the night before, voices came through calling him a butthole.
Oh my God. This is the best news I've ever heard.
A disgrace, and even an embarrassment.
Oh my God.
I mean, these fuckers are roasted.
This is the roast of Robert.
Robert came to Gettysburg looking for ghosts, and instead he got a roast. It's a ghost roast.
It's a ghost roast.
I mean, this is a ghost roast.
I mean, who is that guy that runs all the roasts?
Oh my gosh. What's his name?
We need to get Jeff Ross in here quick.
I know.
I mean,
goddamn. I mean, this is the ghost roast of Robert.
Jeez Louise. I do love it. The word butthole, I do think, just scientifically and linguistically, is the funniest word of all time. So I'm excited that it came up today.
It seems like someone in the Farnsworth house just did not like Robert. All Robert would say in response was, "Thank you." The three of them all laughed together, of course, and that's when a voice came through again saying, "Done." At first, they assumed that this was the spirits saying that they were done communicating for the night. But,
yeah, that's what I thought.
But not a moment later, a clear male voice came through saying, "He's there." And just a split second after that, another male voice came through saying, "I'm there."
What?
Robert then said out loud that he didn't understand the prick thing and why did he keep getting called a prick? And just when he did, wouldn't you know it, that gruff voice came through saying,
"Prick."
Yeah.
Followed a second later by,
"That's you."
That's so funny. I was literally in my head formulating how I was going to say maybe this entity or ghost or whatever isn't actually calling him a prick, but he's like not talking about like a penis. He's literally talking about like getting pricked.
Like getting pricked by a needle or something.
Yeah.
And then it took time to say, no, that's you.
Yeah, he confirmed it.
So now, as amazed as they are, they're kind of having the time of their lives.
No, this is literally the funniest thing that could ever happen, I think.
Richard, the author of the source, he's, rolling with laughter. And so he asks out loud, pointing at Robert, he asks, "Is this man a prick?" To which they got the immediate response of,
"Yes."
Yeah.
Robert then asked again, saying, "Am I a prick?" Nothing but silence.
They don't fuck with him. They're like, we're not answering your questions. They fucking hate this guy.
So they were curious why the word prick was so popular with these ghosts. Essentially, it seems like more of a modern...
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. Was that even a thing in Civil War times?
I guess it was. They later did a little research, and I was a little confused by this, but I guess they found that before the 19th century, before the Civil War, before the 1800s really, prick was actually, it says a term of endearment.
Okay.
But like in the way you would call someone a silly old fool. It's like like how you'll call someone, "You're a silly goose."
Oh, come on.
Like, "You're a silly prick."
Yeah.
That's what I understood it to mean. And then as time went on in the 19th century, it became a little more like aggressive. So maybe by this time, it probably was more an insult, I would think.
Yeah, like you were calling you a penis in a negative way.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Here we go.
So Robert then decided to maybe change directions a bit and asked if there were any children present. And right after they asked, what was clearly the voice of a child came through shouting,
"Dad!"
Oh my God. That really is tough.
He asked who the child was, but got no response. They tried again for a while, but didn't get anything that clear. Nicole then asked if they were ready to stop for the night, to which a voice from the box responded,
"Yes."
Yeah.
After that, there were no more responses. Now, here's what you were saying, Maureen. This is exactly what the author theorizes, maybe. He says that there's a tendency when contact is made, such as this, that the investigators will just assume that whomever the spirit was they were talking to is native to that place.
Right.
And he says that may very well be true, but he also puts forth the idea that maybe the entity they were talking to had come along with one of them. For example, why would Rob be getting called a prick, not just at Farnsworth House, but at other places?
Yeah, and I mean, it's possible that he is just such a chode, such a prick, that all sorts of spirits can sense it off of him.
Right.
However, I'm not really getting that vibe.
Right, and Richard doesn't say anything about that, or
Yeah,
so obviously we're not gonna smear an innocent man's name. I mean, maybe he is a prick, who knows? But we won't. We'll just assume that this is just a ghost roast. You know what I mean?
It's a ghost roast, and in this situation, we have to assume that Robert is a great guy, and we support him, even though just a couple episodes ago I made some comments about people with the name Robert, and I said that they need to do some soul searching, and I think this is proof of that. However, we can't judge. We can't judge. Not everyone named Robert is a chode.
Synchronicities, baby.
I mean, things happen. Speaking of, there is an update, or not necessarily an update, but there is a comment I need to add about the episode I just referenced about Robert. That is the disappearance of Patrice Endress, and that will be happening at the end of the episode.
Please do.
Okay.
So now let's talk about the Sarah Black Room.
Yeah.
So when Richard, the author of our source, booked his stay at the Farnsworth Inn, he requested to be put in the most haunted room they had. So immediately they recommended the Sarah Black Room, as it is considered to be one of the more haunted locations at Farnsworth House, perhaps second only to the cellar, which we will get to later.
Of course.
Here's a direct quote from my source.
"A host of ghost stories and lore surround this particular room, and I reason that even if only half of them had a basis in truth, then I would be moving into one of the most haunted rooms in Gettysburg, if not the whole country."
Yeah, that must be scary. Even if you're, into that stuff. That's a lot.
At the top of the episode, we gave a brief history of Farnsworth House. And in it, we mentioned that in 1909, George and Verna Black took ownership of the place, and it's said that Verna had a good eye for spotting potential, and she noticed even back then that people were already making Gettysburg a tourist location.
Oh, yeah.
So they capitalized on the idea, and the place was converted into a lodge to house and entertain tourists.
I mean, it's a good idea.
In 1918, the Sleepy Hollow Lodge, as they called it, opened for business. And in 1959, when George and Verna had passed, the place went to their daughter, Sarah Black.
Oh, shoot.
So the vast majority of the experiences here have to do with the spirit of the young boy we talked about earlier, Jeremy,
Okay.
who tragically died when he was hit by a horse and buggy.
Yes.
As the story goes, Jeremy's father rushed to his son, whose wounds were so bad he was already nearly dead. And with nothing that could be done, the poor man carried his son back to the lodge, taking him to what was then the nursery, which is now the bathroom of the Sarah Black room. And it's said the man stayed in that room for hours upon hours, weeping over the loss of his son, holding him in his arms.
Oh my God, that's upsetting.
So today, obviously, Jeremy's father is also part of these sightings as well. Most often, he is seen pacing along the hallway outside of the Sarah Black room, or sitting in the rocking chair of the McFarlane room. Personally, to me, the spirit of the father sounds residual.
Yeah, I was going to say that, at least in some form or fashion. Yeah, I get that impression too.
Like a replay playing over and over. And funny enough, right as I had made that note while I was doing my research, Richard in the book essentially said the same thing. Here's what he says, and I'll just quote him directly.
The fact that there seems to be no accounts of a well-dressed gentleman speaking to those who saw him or making any sort of eye contact made me think that the forlorn apparition was likely a residual ghost, a sort of paranormal recording that contains no more awareness or intelligence than the images that you see on your TV screen.
Yes. Yeah.
Great way to put it.
That is a great way to put it.
That's a great way to put it. It's like, say you're watching Home Alone. It doesn't mean Macaulay Culkin is aware and alive. You know what I mean? It's a replay. It's essentially. I thought that was a great analogy.
And it's a good way to like feel maybe a little bit better about the situation. It's not necessarily like this man's spirit is like going through turmoil forever.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
It has nothing to do with his spirit per se.
Right.
That's a whole other situation. This is just like a replay of his energy, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. And it makes me, and this is separate from the episode, but the question, I don't know why this question just now came to me. Say something awful like this happens to someone.
Yeah.
But say they live on many more years before they die. Could that residual haunting be happening even while they're alive?
That's a really good question, and I've never even really thought about that, and I don't know. We should look into that.
That's very... I don't know why that thought just occurred to me, but if something awful like that were to happen... Does that
while
person
you were young.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that person need to pass before a residual haunting can happen? Because if it's not intelligent, and if it seems like it could happen before that person even passes, right? I don't know. Listeners, I mean, if there's someone who knows better, send us, give us a shout out.
Yeah, let us know. Once again, creepstreetpodcast@gmail.com or DM us on the social media, baby.
Jeremy, however, is fully aware and interactive.
Oh,
And while friendly, he is said to be a bit of a troublemaker.
Okay, I do like that, though.
Often he runs rampant throughout the rooms and hallways of Farnsworth House. Often folks will hear a giggle and feel something brush past them. And boy, does he love playing pranks.
You gotta have fun. I mean, you're dead, for Christ's sake.
For Christ's sake.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
I support that.
Oftentimes, people staying in the Sarah Black room will be awakened by a giggle somewhere in the dark of their room.
That's horrifying, but I'm happy for Jeremy.
It becomes tradition that folks staying at Farnsworth will leave behind toys or candy after they leave as little gifts for Jeremy.
Oh, that's cute.
Richard planned to use some of these candies and toys to help his investigation. Along with the usual cameras, EMF readers, Richard had also brought with him something specific for this entity. He calls it a Boo Buddy. And basically what it is a teddy bear, but inside of it has been installed temperature, vibration, and EMF sensors. So Richard handed in his keys to the McFarlane room and checked into the Sarah Black room just a few doors down. The room itself, he says, is definitely an upgrade to the McFarlane room. Speaking with one of the housekeepers, Richard was told that Jeremy was the entity she had encounters with the most, and that he would like to leave toys in the middle of the floor while she was cleaning. She would pick the toy up, put it back in its place, only to turn her back for a moment and find that the toy was back in the middle of the floor.
Ooh.
When you walk into the Sarah Black room, the first thing that catches your eye is a white wedding dress mounted on a stand by the window. Legend has it that this was once the wedding dress of a woman who was left standing at the altar, but there's really no way of proving that. But it is believed that Farnsworth House came into possession of the dress when members of the Black family donated them to the Farnsworth House. Guests who have stayed in that room say that at night, the dress takes on a life of its own. Many have awoken in the middle of the night to see the arms of the dress moving as if someone was wearing it.
No, that's too scary, and I won't handle it. I won't have it.
And it will feel as if there's a body in it.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot.
Well, that night, after Richard washed up, he crawled into the big wooden 4-post bed and he flipped through the guest book, and he just couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. And once he turned the lights out and tried to get some sleep, he just couldn't take his eyes off that dress.
Yeah.
Because, whether it moves or not, in the dark, the thing looks like a floating apparition. It just, a wedding dress in the dark looks like a ghost, for God's sake.
Good Lord, that's scary. You know where I keep my wedding dress? In my damn closet.
Yeah. The author even confesses that despite having done this work for decades and having visited countless haunted locations across the world, he doesn't actually like staying the night in haunted places. Sleep just feels too vulnerable a state for a place like that.
I completely understand that.
So, he's in the dark, he's trying to sleep, and he realizes that's just not going to work. So he flips the light on by the lamp by the bed, and he goes back to reading the guest book, which contains many incredible encounters.
I'm sure.
One such entry was made by a couple named Tom and Dawn. They stayed in the Sarah Black room for 2 nights, and each night they were awakened several times, always between the hours of 2 and 4 a.m.
Okay, that makes sense.
There would be the sound of heavy footsteps pacing around outside their door, and as time went on, it sounded as though those heavy footsteps were now pacing in their very room. The couple claimed to have even communicated with the spirits of Sarah Black, Jeremy, and Walter. The spirits told them that they actually prefer to stay in the cellar rather than the attic. The spirits even claimed that someone referred to as Father had conducted an exorcism down there.
Father? I wonder if that's like father like a priest? Or...
I would assume they're referring to a priest, right?
Yeah,
I would assume. Although it is interesting that voice says dad. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I could see it being a priest for sure, but maybe there's also some other person there that, I don't even mean a spirit, like another person that has done something, that conducted some sort of ritual and referred to themselves as father or something. I don't know.
After these two checked out, another couple checked in who also claimed to have had experiences in the room. They reported hearing strange noises coming from above them in the attic, and one of them even claimed to have felt phantom hands run through her hair.
Oh my God, I would lose my mind.
Then the next people to check in were another couple. It's always couples, which makes sense.
Yeah, come on. You gotta, enjoy it. Have a fun, romantic time.
While staying here, the lady had awakened around 5 a.m. needing to use the bathroom. So she goes to the bathroom and she's, sitting on the toilet. She's kind of in a daze, she's half asleep. When she hears something, she's sitting in there and she hears what sounds like someone in their room walking around the 4-post bed where her husband is sleeping. Now she's awake, and she's sitting there quietly, listening intently, and that's when she heard bang, bang, 2 loud knocks that sounded like they came from underneath the wooden bed frame, like someone was underneath it, punching the bottom of the bed frame.
Yeah.
So she bursts out of the bathroom, only to find the room empty and her husband sound asleep. The next couple experienced some weird things too. They would awaken in the middle of the night to the sound of the doorknob on their door being jiggled, like as if someone's trying to get in from the outside.
Ooh, scary.
That's when they realized the room was absolutely frigid, cold.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would even creep slowly to the door the whole time watching the handle shake. They'd be standing right there by the door, and then in a flash, they'd rip it open. No one there.
Yeah.
And they would not, if it was a person, they would not have had time to.
Oh, no. They would
get
at least
away.
see them running down the hall or something. Yeah.
Same thing with, was it Joe Natalini who saw the face?
Oh, I can't even really talk about that, but yeah.
I mean, he literally, right as he got to the door, he saw it turn and run. I mean, he would have been able to see if it was a person.
Yeah. And also, just a little fact, I don't know a ton about it, but I do know that like sensation or event or whatever you want to call it, where like the idea or the feeling or the actual thing happening or apparition or whatever of a face in between like the crack of like a wall or a door or something like that itself is actually a yokai.
Oh.
Yes. And we did if you don't know what a yokai is, we did an episode on yokais.
Yeah.
Basically, it has a lot to do with like Japanese paranormal events.
Yes.
So just maybe check out our yokai episode.
Dang it. Let's do a yokai too.
I think we should, yeah.
Because there's obviously countless yokai. I
Yeah.
mean, let's do a yokai too soon, because that was a fan favorite.
Yeah, let's do that. Get ready for that, folks.
Well, the next couple that checked in had weird crap happen as well.
Oh, God.
They were repeatedly awakened by what sounded like an old-style record player. And they would notice an overwhelming smell of perfume.
Oh, yeah?
The next morning, at around 7 a.m., the couple was awake in bed discussing the strange events that occurred during the night, and that's when they began to hear thud, thud, the sound of heavy footprints that seemed to be walking around their bed. And they're still laying in it.
Yeah.
And they're trying to keep a cool head, That's when they began to feel the bed itself start to shake, like someone was rocking it back and forth.
Oh, my God.
They both hop out of bed, and rather than run out of the room, they tried to recreate what had just happened, and try as they might, they were unable to recreate the sensation they had felt. And keep in mind, this is a sturdy old wooden 4-post bed.
Oh, yeah. Love those.
Another guest reported the sensation of having their feet touched while laying in bed. That is really terrible to me, in my opinion, and I hate that. The next morning, the same guest sat in the chair that was by the window planning out their day. When outside, they heard the clip-clop of horse hooves.
Ooh.
And of course, it's Gettysburg, right? There's always reenactments going on. So the sound of horses was no big deal. But when they pulled back the curtains to have a look, there were no horses in sight. And what was interesting is it didn't just sound like one horse, but a whole cavalry of horses.
Oh, interesting.
One guest reported a force hitting the bed so hard that it moved the whole thing a few inches.
No.
Here's a creepy one. Another couple in this guest book reported that while in bed at night, something invisible inserted itself between them, almost like it was pushing them apart, trying to squeeze in. Almost like the ghost is saying, hey, make room, I want some sleep too.
Yeah. Maybe I wonder if they could feel a difference. I don't really know, but my first thought was like a kid would do to its mom and dad.
Yes.
Like a kid would come into bed in the middle of the night scared and try to, squirm in there.
Well, and that's what I thought at first too, because Jeremy.
Right.
Like a kid, they come into the parents' bedroom at night and squeeze in and fall asleep.
Yeah.
But in this account, this thing was pushing them to opposite sides of the mattress, almost like it was pushing them out of bed.
Oh, weird.
Another couple had been awakened by someone pulling on their arms.
Nope, hate that.
And they even further were surprised when they awoke the next morning to find a bottle of Advil that they had bought now in the center of the floor with pills scattered all around. Now, this actually, they think maybe was Jeremy, because this sounds like him putting toys and stuff in the middle of the room. Maybe he didn't even know he probably knew what tablets were or something, but he probably opened it up and just spilled them all over the place.
He's just having a good time.
The author points out how much of the activity in this room is centered around the bed, along, of course, with the wedding dress, but there's also a top hat that stays in the room on the shelf. One guest reported returning to their room to find that the top hat, was now sitting on one of the bedposts. So they did their best to kind of shake it off, and they went out for a few hours. They went to dinner, and then when they returned again, they were shocked to find that the top hat was now perched on top of the wedding dress.
Weird.
Now this was freaky. Later that night, this same couple was awakened from their sleep by the sound of heavy footsteps pacing outside the door. But here's what's even weirder. Now as they looked around the room, the top hat was nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
They
Wow.
even checked the bathroom. It was gone. They obviously did not sleep well that night either. The boyfriend kept feeling like someone was pulling the hair on the back of his head. He was convinced that it was, his lady laying next to him just trying to scare him. But later in the night, the girlfriend felt what seemed like someone tickling the arch of her foot in the dark. These freaks like feet, baby.
They're foot freaks, and I am so upset by that. I am one of those people that I feel like I need to have my whole body covered by blankets when I'm sleeping to protect me from I don't really know what, and this is kind of validating for me and showing that blankets are protection.
Oh, yeah. And when they woke up the next morning, the hat that was missing most of the night was now sitting proudly once again on top of the wedding dress. I thought it was interesting that it actually just went away for a while.
I think that's kind of odd, right?
Yeah.
That it
very
would just
interesting.
it's because you think about it, it's like
was whoever pacing outside, was it like, that's my hat?
yeah, I was wondering that too.
Like, say this is the pacing of Jeremy's father. Maybe he had worn a hat at that time, and obviously the hat that they have in there is not his hat, but maybe I don't know, who knows?
He likes the hat. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird to think about like matter just like disappearing. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
you wonder what these ghosts or entities or whatever are really capable of.
Right.
I don't know. That's weird.
Something also interesting that the author points out is that a lot of these hauntings seem to almost be cyclical in nature. They always seem to intensify around certain significant dates. And they say, of course, that as the July anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg comes around every year, the activity skyrockets.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So now let's explore the story of two women. One of which is Lisa, whom we met earlier. She was there with her friend Nicole.
Incredible.
Well, she was thrilled by their experience, and now she was back for a little more excitement, this time with another friend of hers named Chinita.
Lisa and Chinita, incredible stuff. We're so happy for you. Hell yeah.
And this time, rather than the McFarlane room, they were staying in the Sarah Black room.
Oh, they went for it.
If it was an experience they were looking for, well, an experience they sure got.
Yikes.
The day started off quiet. It was August, and which is a very busy time for Gettysburg.
Yeah.
Tourists coming in from all over the world, and probably, I would assume, families fitting in last-minute vacations before school starts.
Right.
And the Farnsworth House is almost always booked solid this time of year, so Lisa and Chinita were not really that spooked when they would hear the sound of footsteps outside the door. Especially Lisa. She'd been to this rodeo.
Oh yeah.
She gets it.
Yeah.
I mean, child's play, baby.
Come on.
It was probably just also one of the other lodgers, because now the place is booked solid.
So there's lots of people moving and grooving.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But that mindset started to change when the footsteps wore on long into the night, long after guests had retired to their rooms. Paranormal or not, for Lisa, footsteps, like I said, they were child's play, baby. She wanted that grade A spooky shit. That's when they were startled by a heavy dragging sound coming from above them in the attic. But still, the ladies put on a brave face, because maybe the banging sounds coming from the attic are just residual effect from the Confederate soldiers who were stationed up there, but nothing intelligent. Once again, child's play.
Oh yeah.
But that's when it seemed like the phenomenon itself was beginning to close in on them. The footsteps now sounded as if they were pacing in their very room. And while freaky, the ladies were resolute that they would not be scared away. So they turned off the lights and tried to go to sleep. But as soon as their head hit the pillow, a tapping sound started on the headboard right behind Chinita's head.
Oh.
Chinita then called out, "Please stop, we really need to get some sleep." And instantly, all sounds in the room stopped.
Okay.
Thinking it was over for the night, the women tried to get some sleep. Lisa fell asleep almost immediately, and Chinita tried, but had been dealing with a stuffy nose all day and was kind of having trouble falling asleep. But right as she was about to drift off, Chinita felt something pushed down at the bottom of the bed by her feet.
Oh my God.
She sat up straight and turned on the lights, and her jaw dropped. There at the foot of the bed were 2 indentations that looked as if a pair of invisible hands were pushing down on the bed. Quickly, she roused Lisa and told her, "Hey, look at this." And the 2 of them watched as these indentations would push up and down on the mattress. They watched for a while until these hands just seemed to disappear, and once again, all was quiet. Well, it was 3 a.m., and Chinita was awakened by the feeling that the bedding was moving. She realized she was being tucked in. That's when she heard the sound of the bathroom faucet turn on full blast, both handles.
Wow.
It ran for a few moments and then just as abruptly turned off.
Oof.
Then the flashlights they had brought with them that sat atop the dresser somehow began to turn on all by themselves. But Lisa also had experiences that night. It wasn't just for Chinita. She was awakened several times that night by something playing with her hair. When they both finally awakened in the morning, Lisa told Chinita that all her whispering through the night made it hard for her to sleep. And Chinita assured her she had not been whispering.
Wow. That also really freaks me out, the like whispering in your ear while you're sleeping shit.
Yes.
That really scares me.
So now, jumping back to Richard and his stay with his companions, they conducted a spirit box session in the Sarah Black room, but got nothing. But that would all change when they went to the cellar.
Yeah.
So the cellar is where Mr. Sweeney of the Sweeney House, the OG, this is where Mr. Sweeney, at the time of the battle, actually took shelter with several other locals.
Okay.
You can imagine that during the heat of battle, they're unsure what was actually going to happen to them. The folks sheltering down there were terrified.
I can't imagine. That must have been so scary.
Even down in the cellar, they could clearly hear the sound of musket and cannon fire outside, as well as the wailing of dying soldiers. And on top of that, there were Confederates in the attic.
Yeah, in the fucking house.
Like they had already kind of had their place taken from them and were ordered to go down in the basement.
Good Lord. And as we said before, all basements are scary. I don't want to hear any sort of rebuttal on that. But this basement at this time, I'm assuming, is especially scary. You know, these cellars, they're not like finished basements, what we think of now. It's like, it's scary. You go down there when you think there's a tornado and you want to keep your damn potatoes or whatever the hell.
Right.
Yeah.
Today, the owners of Farnsworth House have the cellar decorated like a 19th century undertaker's parlor with old wooden pews lined up for visitors to sit in.
Whoa.
As visitors descend the stairs into the cellar, the first sight they are greeted by is that of a coffin.
Ooh.
In the front of the room, and opening it, you will find a strikingly lifelike mannequin posing as a dead man, and its lifeless eyes looking up at you.
Oh, the eyes are open?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mannequin,
I know,
but it's
but
apparently
still.
very lifelike looking, especially when like the lights are dimmed and whatnot.
Good Lord.
You know?
Yeah, that is some dark shit.
I mean, if we already know wedding dresses come to life,
I mean,
I wouldn't want that motherfucker walking around.
No.
Then there is the large mirror that sits up against one of the walls.
Damn.
And this mirror is super freaky. It's said that Lorraine Warren herself claimed a negative entity was attached to this mirror, and she advised all to keep a good distance between themselves and it.
And I mean, you know, I think we've touched on it in past episodes. We've never really, I don't think at least, really did a deep dive or whatever. And maybe that's something for a future episode, just about mirrors in general.
Yeah.
I mean, mirrors hold a lot of importance and a lot of power in even just religions all around the world. You know, you cover your mirror during certain, you know, times in life and things like that. And then also mirrors are known to be possibly portals to another realm or a way for ghosts to communicate, or maybe something more sinister. I don't know.
Yes.
Not to scare you, sometimes mirrors are just a way to, you know, check out that beautiful fat ass.
Absolutely.
But sometimes mirrors can be scary.
Visitors will often snap a photo of their reflection, only to later, when looking at their photos, find someone or something standing next to them.
Oh, God.
Someone they couldn't see when they took the picture. Kayla, the tour guide, we've talked about many times.
We love Kayla. Honestly, Kayla, if you're listening, like, you are a queen.
We'll have to get her on the show.
Yeah, we want to meet you.
Kayla, the tour guide, has on many occasions come down to the cellar to find that the mirror was somehow covered up by a cloth when it had been left uncovered. Sometimes she would even come down to the cellar to find that the mirror had been flipped around to face the wall. Not only would visitors report seeing a ghostly apparition in the mirror, oftentimes they would report seeing specifically a woman dressed entirely in black, staring back at them with a look of sadness and rage. Once Kayla's own aunt was there visiting, and she was on one of the tours that Kayla was giving, and she saw what appeared to be a child's handprint on the mirror. Suddenly appear, and then they watched as this smudge just slowly disappeared.
Interesting.
In fact, this mirror would go on to be the focus of almost an entire episode of Kindred Spirits.
Yeah.
Season 3, Episode 3, if you're interested. You can actually see Kayla in the episode. The visit came actually just a few weeks after Richard had left his investigation. And while there is a lot of supernatural activity at Farnsworth House, the cellar is where it's said to be the most malevolent.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Especially when it comes to that dang mirror. This specific mirror was bought at an estate sale there in Gettysburg, and it actually only came to the Farnsworth House in July of 2019. It had only been there not long before Kindred Spirits actually came to visit.
Interesting. So maybe this mirror has some sort of, history and energy and capability to it that has nothing really to do with the Farnsworth House.
Yes.
Okay.
The moment it arrived, they say the activity increased greatly.
Yeah.
They even had a specialist look at the mirror. The frame itself, they think, was made around 1910, and they believe that there was actually a painting in the frame before it was a mirror.
Oh.
It also appeared that the mirror has been repaired at one time.
Okay.
It turns out, after research, from what I understand, one of the original owners of this, at least the frame, who knows if it was already a mirror, if it was a painting back then, was a man named Clarence Collins. He was a convicted murderer and sex trafficker.
Oh, God.
And in fact, in Kindred Spirits, in that episode, they do a spirit box session which seemed to confirm that this mirror brought with it a new entity, because they asked, is there something new here? And, the voice on the box is like, yes.
Yeah.
And they're like, where did it come from? And it just said, mirror.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, Richard was about to have an experience of his own in that very cellar when him and his team stayed the night down there for their investigation. A few weeks before Richard's visit, a guest on tour ran like mad out of the place in terror when she snapped a photo of herself in the mirror. And when she looked at the photo she had taken, she saw a strange black smile superimposed over her mouth.
Oh my God, that's horrifying.
Yeah. What's interesting is that whatever the cause of the paranormal activity, it seems to react more negatively to women.
I mean, classic. I mean, this is on brand for just paranormal activity.
And while men certainly have their experiences there too, it's the women visitors who report the more aggressive encounters.
Yeah.
The entire staff has grown to dislike that mirror. One tour guide was even pushed to the point where she quit her job because whatever was attached to that mirror would continually bully her. So it makes you wonder, maybe it was this Clarence Collins guy, especially if he trafficked women, all this stuff. So he was a real piece of shit. So who knows? Maybe it's him that's attached to it.
Yeah. And you know what? Good for that woman for quitting.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We believe in this shit, but that doesn't mean you need to subject yourself to abuse from a goddamn ghost.
Right.
Get the fuck out of there if you need to.
So Kayla was down there in the cellar with Richard and his team, and she's telling them stories about what had happened when Ghost Hunters was there before filming an episode at the place. Kayla was midway through her story about the mirror when Richard suddenly felt the sharp jab of a finger in the small of his back. It was strong enough that it actually kind of hurt a little bit.
Oh.
He quickly turned around, thinking it was one of his team members, a woman named Anna, trying to get his attention, but she was sitting 2 rows behind him and to the side a little bit.
Right.
She knew right away that Richard had experienced something because just at that moment, right before Richard had felt the jab in his back, Anna felt a frigid cold sweep over her.
Yep.
It seemed that whatever was down there was, for the moment, focused on Richard. So, as an experiment, Richard had everyone else go upstairs, leaving himself alone down there because perhaps without an audience, whatever it was that was trying to get his attention might be more interactive.
Yeah.
Once alone, Richard called out, inviting whatever spirits that were there to communicate with him, but alas, nothing of note happened.
Yeah.
So after a while, his teammates, Anna and Jason, they come back down and they bring with them an SB11 spirit box, and they try to communicate that way. Once again, nothing. Not finished yet, Richard busted out his phone and pulled up some Civil War music. That's when Anna began to feel those chills again. A few moments later, Richard too began to feel a frigid cold sensation. What's interesting is that Jason didn't feel this cold, but when he would step close to Richard, then he could feel it. Well, that's when they started to notice quick flashes of light on the back wall by where the mirror was. And this area was not at an angle where like light from outside would reflect or, you know. But that is when the smell came.
Oh my God, the smell.
An overwhelming smell of feces.
Oh, and we usually think of that with the demonic.
Yes.
Yikes.
Richard, the author, says it was the worst smell he had ever smelled.
Yikes.
Anna used her phone to look up Civil War sound effects that included musket and cannon fire and the clashing of bayonets and even the cries of injured soldiers.
Yeah.
Even then, other than the awful, awful smell, nothing happened. So they actually kind of left the cellar that night feeling kind of bummed that they didn't get something more clear and definitive. They had personal experiences, but nothing
Right.
you could like, look at this or listen to this.
You can't like prove. You just, yeah.
Right. The next morning, Richard came down from his room for breakfast. I think this was his last day of his stay. Robert and Nicole were down there too. Remember Prick and his wife?
Yes, a positive Robert, as far as we know.
They were happy to see him, greeted him, and they introduced him to another employee there named Vivian, who oversaw housekeeping at Farnsworth House. Well, Robert had told her about how he had been constantly being called either Prick or Daddy, and Vivian took note of this and shared an interesting story. She was familiar with the activity of the house and would always have a recorder going while she was working in case it captured something. One day she was working in the Sweeney room and nothing out of the ordinary was happening, but she was, recording anyway. And a few hours later, she was shocked when she played back what she had recorded and distinctly heard the voice of a young girl saying, "Daddy."
Oh, okay.
She explained that Mr. Sweeney had a niece named Sissy who actually died there at Farnsworth House. So the next day, Vivian went back to that room with her recorder and called out saying, "Okay, Sissy, if you're here, say Daddy again." Funny enough, what she captured, loud and clear, was the word Jeremy,
Really?
followed by the words
Boys, hugs.
Boys and hugs?
yeah.
Okay.
And then a few moments later after that, she could faintly hear the word
Daddy.
She also had a story that might explain why the word prick kept getting thrown around.
Oh, brother.
A number of years earlier, a young blogger and his girlfriend came to the place to blog their experiences there.
You gotta blog.
They stayed for about 3 or 4 nights and quickly got under the skin of all of the staff.
Oh, fuck.
They were true douchebags.
Oh, no.
Entirely antagonistic and disrespectful to the spirits that resided there. They'd go door to door, loudly, threatening the spirits.
Jesus Christ. I hate it when people, take this route.
Yes.
It's so stupid. It's obviously, it's either you have not researched this,
Right.
not just Gettysburg, but just ghost hunting in general, or you're just a fucking asshole.
Right. Or if this is a method, because sometimes investigators will try a more antagonistic group.
Yeah.
At least explain that to the
Yes.
staff.
Don't be a dick to the staff, the living staff.
Explain that, just so you know, I'm going to try to be a little more antagonistic with these
Yeah.
things. At least explain that. It sounds like these people were just truly douchebags.
Yeah, they probably just didn't believe in it anyway, and were just trying to get good content or whatever, and they can
Right.
fuck off.
So on the last morning of their stay, the young blogger came in with a look on his face. He was like white as a ghost.
Oh, yeah.
He explained that the night before, as he was walking through the door of the Sarah Black room, something suddenly, forcefully knocked him to the ground. His head, fortunately, hit the carpet rather than the hardwood floor.
Yikes, yeah.
Dazed, he tried to get back to his feet, and as he did, a harsh voice spoke in his ear saying one word, "Prick."
Wow.
His girlfriend was sitting on the bed and saw this whole thing happen. While he was on the ground, he seemed to be temporarily paralyzed, unable to move his arms or legs. And that's when she felt ghostly hands suddenly grip her by the ankles, and in a flash, she was yanked off the bed. They fled immediately, driving to a friend's house over an hour away. They had returned that next morning so they could check out.
Yeah.
Vivian continued with other stories, such as on Mother's Day, she was able to interact with Jeremy. The inn is, even on holidays like Mother's Day, Father's Day, the inn is always a little more busy, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And likewise, because of that, there's just more energy in the place, so maybe the ghosts are a little more active. Vivian had finished cleaning the Jeremy room when, as you can imagine, it's filled with toys for him to play with. Often there is a blue ball that he likes to play with that will appear in the middle of the room after it's been put away. So on this day, Vivian had a little experiment in mind. She put the blue ball on the shelf, and there was also lots of like wooden blocks around. And what she did was she built a little perimeter around this blue ball on all sides.
Okay.
She called out telling Jeremy that she had a few free minutes, and if he wanted to play, now was the time.
Yeah.
Right on cue, she watched the blue ball hop up and over the wooden blocks and fall to the floor.
Oof.
So she picked it back up, put it back where it was on the shelf, and called out again, asking Jeremy to do it again. Once again, the ball did the same thing, hopping over the blocks and onto the floor. And just to be sure, she tried it a third time, and a third time it happened.
Wow.
She also shared an interesting story about a couple from Michigan that were visiting the inn. They stayed there for about 5 days in total, 2 nights in the Sarah Black room, 2 in the Jeremy room, and 1 in the McFarlane room.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This young couple had brought with them some equipment to record, any possible events. And something to note is that in the McFarlane room, mounted on the wall, is a small Victorian-style child's dress.
That's horrifying.
And they had set up a camera to record while they were there, and what they captured was pretty fascinating. They showed Vivian the video, and in this video, suddenly there appears what looks like a blue light overlaid on the dress. And this blue light was shaped in the shape of what you would think of the letter L, but backwards.
Oh, okay.
That's when the dress itself flipped upward in the air before dropping back down. And keep in mind, the windows are closed, there's no vents near where this dress is, but that wasn't all. They fast-forwarded the video for a few hours later, because this is when they were asleep.
Right.
The sun comes up, and you can see the young woman getting out of bed to use the bathroom. While she's in the bathroom, her boyfriend's still asleep in bed. She was in there for about 5 minutes when all of a sudden, that strange blue light in the shape of a backwards L appeared again, this time over the doorknob of the bathroom door. That's when the knob itself began to turn, and the door even opened a crack while she was in there. According to Vivian, the Ginny Wade room has become one of the more active locations in the newer part of the property, which is, I said, located in the garden area. This is the place that I said I've specifically been to, and apparently a phantom cat is reported to be heard in here, and it can be heard meowing at night, and it apparently will even venture to other parts of the inn. Guests will often report feeling the sensation of little cat paws walking across them at night.
Yeah, that I would welcome. That is good. The other stuff really freaks me the fuck out. That would actually be cute, and I would like that. And this is a thing. Not just in Gettysburg or Farnsworth House or anything. The idea of phantom cats or black cat, not literally just any black cat that is black, but like shadow cats and things of this nature. So yeah, there's a little bit of a precedent for this.
When I was young, one of the Child's Plays movies was on TV, and I think it was like edited for TV, but it's still freaky.
Oh,
and I didn't see the whole thing, but I saw parts of it. And I remember later that night, I was laying in bed. I was laying on my stomach, and my cat jumped on the bed and I felt its paws walk across my back, and all I can think of is that dog.
Oh, yeah.
Like standing up, like, oh my God, I was so freaked out. But anyway.
But that was just Cheetah.
Yes, that was Cheetah, my first pet.
We love Cheetah.
Inside the Ginny Wade room, there's also a thick rug that sits under a wooden couch, or a settee. How's it pronounced?
Settee, I think.
Settee, S-E-T-T-E, is that what it, or E?
Yeah, it's kind of
something
it's essentially it's a couch or a sofa, but some people call it a settee.
Interesting. Well, when guests are staying, Vivian makes sure that the rug is not underneath the wooden legs of the couch, but always when they return, they find that the rug is underneath the couch.
Oh, brother.
This would imply that the same force was able to actually lift that wooden couch and pull the rug underneath it. It also must be stated that the Ginny Wade room was where some guests, while staying there, had performed a seance with a Ouija board, and these boards are strictly forbidden at Farnsworth House, as they are afraid of making an opening for more nefarious entities. Yeah. Richard, the author of the source, even says, because he brings with him all sorts of tools, and he even brought with him a spirit board, but when he saw the rules, out of respect, he left it in the car.
We love.
Vivian has always been afraid of what these things might let in, and after it happened, it's said the door to the Ginny Wade room began to regularly open and close on its own accord. There was also reports of being watched by unseen eyes. Now, Vivian was so concerned about this that she even brought someone in who performed a cleansing of the room, and it seems to have gotten a bit better after that. You know, that really is kind of where the story ends. Like I said, it's a collection. It's like a museum exhibits.
It is. That was a great way to describe it. Yes. Just kind of experiencing and showing all of the different accounts of what has happened there over the years.
Absolutely.
And what a scary experience, but also, I don't know, there's something beautiful about connecting with the past in such a way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
You know, this is just literally one property within Gettysburg.
Oh, yeah. There are ghosts all over Gettysburg. And in fact, Richard Estep has written another book about another inn at Gettysburg.
Yeah.
A book just like this we'll probably do in the future. That's why I named the episode Gettysburg, The Haunting of, And this is just Gettysburg. There's Civil War ghosts
all over the
dang place. And that's just, it's like that. I mean, anywhere in the world where there's war, there's ghosts. I mean, because there's so much trauma and bloodshed and emotion. I mean, it's no wonder. But yeah, that is just scratching the surface of one location in one battle of a great war.
So we'll definitely we'll do more Civil War content and stories, but specifically, we will definitely be coming back to Gettysburg. So be ready for that when it comes. And Dylan, good golly gosh, thank you so much for doing all that fantastic research.
Well, thank you. It was my pleasure.
Wow, that was a great episode, Dylan. Thank you so much for doing that. But I think there's something you need to do.
Ooh, I got a list of names I wouldn't mind riding into battle with.
All right, here we go.
Folks, give it on up for our top-tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finish-Face V.L. Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bone Breaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud Carl Staub, the Firestarter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Demaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Serve Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, the Maniacal Laura Maynard, the Vicious Karen Van Buren, the Arch Nemesis Aaron Bird, the Sadistic Sergio Castillo, the Rapscallion Ryan Crum, the Beast Benjamin Huang, the Devilish Chris Doucette, the Psycho Sam, the Electric Emily Zhang, the Renegade Corey Ramos, the Crazed Carlos, the Antagonist Andrew Park, the Monstrous Michaela Schur, the Witchy Wonder J.P. Weimer, the Freaky Ben Forsyth, and the Barbaric Andrew Barry.
I mean, wow. Incredible stuff, Dylan. Thank you for listing off those righteous names.
And you know what, Maureen?
What?
We should have done this at the top of the show, but a
What?
big birthday shout out to none other than the vivacious Vicky McHugh.
Oh my God, yes!
When this episode comes out on the June 30th, her birthday is July 3rd.
Correct.
So she will be having a birthday in between episodes, so a big old shout out for her.
Yes, much love to you. Happy birthday to you. We hope you have an incredible day. And on that note, just a big thank you to all of our top tier Patreon subscribers. We are so grateful for you all. Thank you. And a huge thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers, no matter the damn tier. You're all beautiful and wonderful. But still, even furthermore, thank you to all of you for listening, whether or not you are a Patreon subscriber. We love you. We are glad to have you here. Thank you for joining us. You are a blessing, and we love you. Now, going back to the disappearance of Patrice Andrus.
Oh, yes.
I have a comment to add.
Okay.
As I mentioned earlier in the episode. I had a conversation with the maniacal Laura Maynard, and I think I need to make an apology.
Uh-oh.
I am just now learning that some people actually do sleep cuddled together all night long.
Yeah, that's...
I'm going to be honest, I can't even imagine.
I mean, well, for the record, Mo and I love to cuddle.
Yes.
But when it comes to actually sleeping, I need my little space.
I gotta move and groove.
Absolutely.
But apparently, some people are straight up snuggling all night long. And I support you, I'm with you, I embrace you, and I lift you up. And thank you for doing what you do. That would be cool for if I could be that way, but I'm just not built that way. But thank you. And I just wanted to say, anyone else who's out there who snuggles all night long with whoever the hell, your partner or whatever. I, a couple episodes ago, said that would not happen, and if you are, you're a psycho. I take it back. God bless you. I wish you well. Once again, couldn't be me, but I wish you well, and I think that's cool. Just wanted to get that out there. We needed to clear the air, and thank you to the maniacal Laura Maynard for bringing the truth to the surface.
That was classy, Maureen. I liked that.
You know, sometimes you have to admit when you're wrong, and I think this was that time.
Also, just briefly, to our listeners in the United States, a happy 4th of July.
Yes, enjoy it.
Have a great time. Be safe. Have fun. And we hope you have a good time. And, of course, everybody, we love you. Thank you for listening.
And please remember to like, rate, subscribe, leave us a review. You know, leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or really anywhere, but especially those two. I mean, it really does help the show, and it brings more people in, and that makes it more fun. It is just exciting. And so if you can, just take a minute, give us a 5 stars, just write a quick review. It would mean the world to us, and we are so thankful for all that you do for us, and keep up the good work.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Bye-bye.